on my first step ever. This is the place where every week we come across a superstar, a superstar of their own life, because they have created something which really makes them happy to get up each day and do what they really want. It doesn't mean that they do not have challenges. It doesn't mean that they do not have the low days. And it doesn't really mean that everything is working out perfectly well for them. But what it means is that they have built conviction in themselves and in their journey. And so, my friends, today I would like to welcome one such amazing youngster from Australia on the virtual studios of my first step ever. As we are soon approaching 200 episodes, I couldn't be more happier to have him over here because I believe he's not only the voice of youth for today's generation, but he also kind of shows that what outside the box thinking and also how believing in oneself can really help serve them lead the life that they want. So, Akshat, welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. That's really nice.
Before we begin, and I'm excited to know what your journey has been so far. I think before we were just about to kind of begin this recording, I did mention that what really caught my attention was your mindset. And from what I picked up is that I felt that you have a very experimental mindset and you take actions. You take actions quicker. That's what I've picked up. Now, that's something that we need to explore with you today on this particular conversation. But I like to give a bit of a sneak peek about you to our listeners today. So, before we begin with that, I'd like to say that Akshat Agarwal believes that the world's hardest problems aren't unsolved because of a lack of people, but because lack of spaces. Now, he's a creator, a builder, a founder, and someone who has never been afraid to experiment or take the unconventional route. So, this is definitely something that I have understood about him. And he's a proud dropout of the amazing university UNSW and a true outside the box thinker. Akshat brings a fresh, fearless perspective to innovation and problem solving. So I'm excited to dive into this journey, get to know about him, his mindset, his ideas, him as a person. And yeah, so if you are new to this podcast, hit the subscribe button and let's get on this journey with Akshat. So, Akshat, we would love to understand your early childhood days. Where were you born? What was the mindset of the people that you were surrounded with while you were growing up?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born in India, in a place called Jaipur. But then my parents migrated to Australia when I was young, like perhaps I think 6 or 7 years old. Um, as an immigrant, it was like somewhat hard, I think, like fitting into Australian culture and schools, etc. Um, but it was like difficult, but it was like I think we focused like as Indians, we focused on like academia quite a lot, and then put a lot of sort of pressure around getting good marks, studying, etc. And predominantly my high school and perhaps my university, like sort of high school and primary school was focused on academia and sort of trying to fit into this, like, hey, you have to be a great student, you have to do well at university, or like at school, and therefore university, and therefore in life. There was almost like I think like retrospectively it was almost this path of like you have to take this traditional path, right, of like, hey, you go to school, do well, go to high school, then do well, and then go to university, do well, then etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was yeah, early days.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And from what I believe in sort of conversations that I've had with people who have moved countries at very young and tender age, it has sort of had an impact on them in terms of, at times they had some sort of an identity crisis while growing up. And the kind of bullying that they had faced, or, the acceptance has been little challenging for people around them, for new person coming to their country. And now, given that you are doing supremely well in terms of doing what you want, voicing concerns that you want, and creating things that you think can really help and impact people. Now, with that kind of a mindset that you have today, what I'm really interested to know that what was unfolding back then, when you did migrate, you were quite little. Six is quite little. So I don't know if that really, if you have a memory of that sort, but just wanted to kind of understand, while you were here, you were trying to build your life over here and you were growing. It's a very, as I mentioned, it's a tender age, foundational years. How was the conversation with you, with your parents around that point in time, and back then in school with your friends and teachers? If you like to, kind of take us through that.
Yeah, I think it was pretty like figuring it out, right? Like I didn't think my parents didn't really know much. Like it was just a big step for them. Like very grateful for them to have migrated. Again, like they were like we're all humans, right? And we're all just trying to figure out life. And it was very much like the unknown for them. And therefore it was the unknown for me as well, right? And it was definitely challenging. I think it was like early days. It was like, oh, I didn't really know. It was like just a whole new culture, like a whole new world, right? And I was like, I've come from like overseas, and there was like this um like expectations and like I don't know, like it was just a whole new country, a whole new world, and um I think fitting in, and I think definitely like having an identity crisis, like um yeah, like really went and get away from culture and said, hey, like I really want to fit in, and I went to the extreme of like, hey, I really want to be one of you, and then really fit in. And like now I'm realizing that that was probably not right, and probably should have leaned into culture and like sort of my upbringing and my roots a bit more. But yeah, that was early days. So like definitely tried to like really hard to like fit in and make sure that I was a like it was like, okay, this is I was a model student, right? I was like a
Mm-hmm.
model like person. I didn't do anything wrong or didn't sort of step out of line, and because otherwise people wouldn't accept me. And so yeah, like that was perhaps our early days and growing up. Like yeah, bullying and all that, but like I think kids are just young. Like we're just young. Like you don't know better, right? Like it happens. But yeah, that was early days.
And thank you so much for kind of sharing that with us, and also kind of opening up over there. But I believe that we all do that at certain times in our life. We all want to kind of fit in somewhere, somehow. And we do it at different ages as well. It could be for different reasons. So it just makes our journey more, I think, for I think a lot of listeners, the youngsters out there who are trying to kind of see that how they can, sort of fit in with things that is happening. But just on that note, while you were kind of, growing up over here, trying to be the model person that you are, is there I would like to kind of now delve into the positive aspect of the things at that point in time. Do you have a memory or any specific memory of your teenage time, you were in the school, that probably has helped you in being the person that you are?
Yeah, I think like my parents like really like set a really high standard for what good looks like, or I think that's a good and a bad thing. Like definitely like we had the highest expectations at home, and like sort of therefore me and my sister were both expected to like do really well. And I think like the sort of the principles and the values were really set in at home. So that was nice. I think that was probably the biggest thing. I don't know how much like school kind of played a role in it, or perhaps even friends. Yeah, like I think it
Mhm.
was a lot about like sort of academic and academia, and like sort of focusing on that. So I think like definitely like my parents played a huge part, but um yeah, I don't know. Like I think I was just still like exploring and like just
Yep.
wandering in like primary and high school, like really just lost in life and trying to find like perhaps meaning, purpose. I don't know what you want to say. Like back then, I didn't really know, but like yeah, I think perhaps from that the positives were like my parents. I think setting good examples.
Yeah, I think you're being just a normal student like any one of us, or the normal kid trying to figure out life, trying to kind of, just go with the flow, but kind of also look at things, where life leads us, or what one really wants to do. So, just on that note, it seems like you were pretty focused on your academia, and like you've really done very well. So, given that you were on that path, you stepped forward a little. Please take us through your academia. I mean, how did that unfold for you, and how did you actually land up in UNSW?
Yeah, sure. I actually didn't do well at all. So I actually did really bad.
Now, that's a twist.
Yeah, no, like it was. Yeah, honestly, it was bad. And I don't even remember my ATAR. Oh, but yeah, it wasn't that great, and I think just was like just pressure, and it was just like
Mm.
yeah, like it wasn't the. I think yeah, just I think it let it get to me, Um, and then it was too much, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
sort of just take a step back, and I think during that time, like I was trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do in university, and I think my parents were a bit more chill at that time. I think they realized that there was a lot more like I was taking a lot on, and they were like, okay, we're gonna just chill a little bit. Um, and I was deciding within like engineering, and also I was watching How I Met Your Mother actually, which is a great show. If you haven't
Hmm.
watched it, shout out. Is And there was a guy called Ted, and he was like he like, was an architect, and he was like, I want to leave a mark on the world, and I want to do
Yeah.
it through a building. And I was like, that's so cool. So the closest thing I thought about was civil engineering, which was like you create a building, and it's like I
Yeah.
want to leave a physical mark on the world through a building, and yeah, that's what I did. I was like, I think at UNSW, I didn't have enough of an ATAR to get in, so you had to do like I think UNSW gives this like you have to interview at UNSW and then you can get into engineering
Uh-huh.
if you pass the interview or like pass like 3 or 4 interviews. So I was like, oh man, I really want to do it because UNSW is a really great school, engineering is really cool, and yeah, like and then I think I got through that and I was like, wow, like I can actually just do shit. Like it was actually
Yep.
quite a proud moment, and because I think I was like after the HSC, I was like, this is it. Like I'm just gonna like my life's kind of like just been pretty average, and yeah, and then I passed the interview and it was pretty cool.
That is actually really cool. I mean, it's not easy to pass an interview like that. But I'd like to kind of, delve into one aspect of your journey so far. Once we realize that we are doing something that we are really not interested in, and we are trying our level best, and we see there's no merit in it, then that point definitely comes. But it's very difficult, and not many people, are able to kind of analyze that quickly and take a next step, and I would say be brave enough to actually think through that what is next for them, what's right for them, rather than just going with the flow even if things are not working for them. So just for our listeners, Akshat, I would like you to kind of revisit that time in terms of what were you thinking when the pressure was getting to you. How did you decide that no, I will not go ahead with this particular path, and I will choose to do what I want, and let's figure it out. How did you get that courage?
Like I wish there was a better answer, but I think it was just purely just burnout. Like I was like, it's just too much, and therefore it was like there was a point where I was just like trying super hard, but it was actually negatively like affecting everything around me. And I was like, okay, probably just better to like just take a chill pill. Like I just take a step
Yeah.
back. Like I don't think there was a deeper like reason. I don't think I had
Hmm.
this like, oh my god, like I think life would be better and nothing in life matters because like you
Hmm.
can just do anything. Like I don't think I was that person like then. But retrospectively, yeah, like it's a great decision. Then I was just like, hey, I just can't do anymore. Like I'm trying my best and like clearly it's not working and yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good to understand what you were kind of thinking, Akshat, because sometimes it's just about doing what you feel is right rather than kind of thinking through too much about things. So I think for our listeners who are listening to us today and who are glued to us and wanting to know how things really unfold in life, at times when things get really difficult, and it's as I think what I picked up from what you were saying, it started negatively impacting you, and if that kind of becomes louder in life, it's better to kind of take a step back than keep going with the flow. So from there, Akshat, I would love to kind of understand that you mentioned about something that clicked with you when you were watching How I Met Your Mother, about that particular character and building spaces. What was that really, if you kind of look back now, and if you can what did that really mean to you? Why did that really attract you at that point in time, that particular thought?
I think it was perhaps like wanting something more. Like I think like life felt like very much like you just do this and you do that, and there wasn't like anything like a deeper meaning to it. And I really resonated with like the whole oh wow, like you can actually really like help the world or like I like the idea of like helping and like perhaps even like leaving a mark on the world. Like perhaps it's a bit narcissistic, but like I really like that idea of like, hey, how do I leave a legacy behind? And I really like I resonated with that idea a lot. And yeah, so like I think engineering, and I think at that time I actually wanted to do like humanitarian engineering. So I wanted to like sort of focus
Okay.
on like how can you go outside of cities and help rural areas build infrastructure. And I was really interested in like transport and water engineering and
Hmm.
like how yeah, like how roads and like waterways and like things like that work and dams work. And so I was, yeah, like it felt like, yeah, like I really wanted to give back or like have something deeper rather than just go, oh, I'm doing engineering because like someone else said so. It's like, okay, that's boring.
Well, definitely not narcissistic, but it does sound like, you probably found something that you aligned with, which is very interesting. The next thing I was kind of really interested to kind of know while you were mentioning is that although you did not have the kind of ATAR or the marks to get into UNSW, one of, I think, the leading universities in Australia, what did make you feel that, preparing yourself for the interview, or how did you get that particular confidence that if you crack the interview, or it could really make things work for you? Because the reason I'm asking this question, because there are a lot of us who are over here listening to this particular conversation, and what happens is that we are only thinking of one particular path to achieve something. Now, your path was to score good and to get into university, but then there was another path which you had to choose, and you worked really well for that. You prepared yourself, and obviously you got through. So, just from that perspective, what I wanted to understand, that how was your mindset around that time, that no, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to try and hit my interview, so I'm going to make it work. If you can take us through what really worked for you back then.
Yeah, like I think this is probably perhaps the first time I was like, you can like the system's kind of broken. Like sure, like you don't actually like sure you needed a good grade, but then I like spent a bit of time, like a lot of time, like going, oh shit, like it's quite bad that I like didn't like this. I should have tried harder, etc. Like sat in it for a period of time, and then I was like, hey, like actually, like look at what's next, um, and I was like, and then I realized like there was actually a bunch of opportunities, and I think like this wasn't probably the only one. There was a bunch of others that I could have actually done. Like I could have gone overseas, like I could have gone interstate, could have like, and like I had focused on one thing so much that I wanted it so badly, but there was a plethora of opportunity out there, and I was like, oh, this is fine. Like life's not like over. Like it's okay.
Love that. Yeah, life sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like that generally. Like I don't know. Like it sounds cliche, but like if one door closes, like there's so many others that open. It's like, oh wow, like, it's a blessing in disguise.
Definitely. And I think when you are in the kind of a environment when everything is going against you of what you have wished for, it is very difficult to focus on this kind of a mindset, that it's okay, let's try something else. But you not only saw that particular opportunity, and also you kind of converted that. So now comes the interesting part where you badly wanted something, you found a way, you got through it, and then you dropped out from the university. What I want to kind of, discuss over here in terms of your journey is, it is so difficult for someone to, first of all, kind of work through their goal. We all have certain goals, and then sometimes we feel that it's not what we really wanted, and then we are kind of left on the cliff hanging, thinking, because now I've taken so much of effort, I should continue in this particular direction. But there are only rarely like few people who have that, courage to, say, nah, let's try something else. So I just wanted to understand from your point of view, how did that decision came about, dropping out, and how did that kind of really work for you emotionally, mentally, if that did do anything to you?
So like dropping out was like very much a rational decision. Like, so I was trying to like, so university, like engineering generally is like you do the degree, you do all the courses, and then you have to do work placement, which is like 9 days of work placement in like an engineering company. And I had done most of my courses, and then at that point, I was starting or launching a fund in Australia, like a venture capital fund, and I was like, oh, I can't really do the 9 days because I'm doing something pretty cool. Like, can you just give me the degree without me doing the 9 days? Like, I think I have done like I've done all the degree, and they were like, no, like we have to stop follow the process. And I was just like, I was super annoyed. Like we went back and forth on it, and they were like, no, like there's no way. So, and like it annoyed me so much because like university is supposed to like help you, and like even throughout university, like I wanted to like learn other things, like other courses. Like I was interested in like different fields and like different like areas that I wanted to learn. And university was like, nah, you can't do those. But isn't university supposed to be like a learning institute where you go for learning rather than like
Hmm.
follow a process? Or and yeah, like I just lost a lot of like hope. And like imagine how many
Hmm.
other dreams were lost because people were like, oh, actually, you have to follow the process that universities kind of said. And like I don't think it's like the university's fault, but I think it's just like, yeah, I don't know, like it
The
just, yeah,
system, the how things were built.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I was like, okay, I'm sorry, like this is perhaps not for me then, because I think like I had really high conviction on like launching this. And I was like, I think this is far greater than me just doing 90 days and getting a piece of paper going, oh, um like I think, you know, like during that time I was also like thinking about like what universities actually provide and like what they give you. Like they give you credentials, which is cool. Like they give you a degree, they give you content, like which is a bunch of information, and they give you a community. But I don't think credentials matter anymore unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, perhaps. Like maybe those matter, and I wasn't either, so it didn't really matter. Um, I think university also gives you discipline. I think it's like provides you with the discipline. Like if you don't have discipline in life, it's a great way to like show up to class, show up to tutorials, like do exams, etc. But uh, like I don't know, credentials don't really matter. Content doesn't really matter. Like you can learn anything, anywhere, anytime. You can meet anybody, anywhere, anytime. And community, like I'm not gonna pay like 200, like $50,000 for community, right? Or discipline. So I was like, okay, I've lost a lot of trust in university, and I'm gonna drop out. So I just like, yeah, peace.
I believe what comes through your personality is definitely you are an out of the box thinker. So you don't like to be, kind of um, restrained in any ways, especially mentally, in your imagination and the way you want to maybe learn things and do things in the world. But probably you also have that courage and the confidence to make the decisions and own them as you go forward. So, as you mentioned that you were in the phase of launching that particular fund, please take us through that journey, because once you did take that decision, how were things from there?
Oh, sure, yeah, like so, like my parents were definitely not happy. They were like, "What is this?"
That's tough one.
Yeah, that was alright. Like I think I'd gone through this in like high school. They were like, and I was like, okay, like really, it is what it is. Like I enjoy this way more than I enjoy the degree and etc. So that was fun. So that was probably challenge one, and then challenge. I don't know. The rest was pretty fun.
So, in your situation or in your experience, what has helped you to have those difficult conversations and to be ultimately be okay with them not being okay? So, if you can probably, share some of your tips and advice for our listeners today, because I think it's a widespread phenomena, and sometimes we do feel guilty about being not able to, make our parents happy, or not understanding the right way of communicating and still doing what we want without feeling bad about things. So, if you can just kind of take us through that, how does that work for you?
Yeah. I was just like sure, like parents haven't like this traditional route of like, hey, you have to do X, Y, Z, and I was just like, I just don't really like it, not really excited about it, and I was just like, hey, I'm not like you're not gonna be the ones that's gonna pursue this life. Like I will be, and I don't want to blame you for something that perhaps you forced upon me. And I think it's like it is what it is. And it's like I don't know, like it was pretty like I think high school or like late high school they kind of like well like okay, yeah, like we should be definitely be more open and to different mindsets and different things. With university, I think it was a similar thing. It took them a pretty like a decent amount of time because they were like, oh, you should do engineering or at least get the degree and like
Yeah.
try to like get a job, etc. in it. But I don't know, like I think like I had enough conviction um, that I think it was the other option, like doing a fund was much cooler in my mind. Um, I don't know, like that was way more fun in my mind. So I was like, this is just cooler, and I don't really want to blame them for like, oh no, you're gonna and I think they kind of understood that. I think they were like, "Yep, this makes sense," and they respected that. So it was good.
It's quite exciting to see that how passionate you were about building that fund, and given that you went all out and you believed in what you were doing, and you had the difficult conversations with people who matter to you and probably were not on board at that point in time. What I want to kind of understand over here, and probably am interested to know, is when you step into things that only you believe in and only you see that can work for you, how do you deal with the thought of what if I fail in this particular thing? Did you ever have that sort of a mindset? From what I understand, I think you were pretty much more excited than to be thinking what if I fail. But for a lot of us, I think that's what our first thought is. If you want to do something a bit more unconventional, or things that really don't go or align with what you know immediate family members are okay with. So what was your mindset? And if you did not think about that, that's great. But if people do feel that, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah, I think there was a period of time where I wanted to like just go around the world and like be like a barista and like just make coffee by day and like just like travel by night. Like I generally thought that was going to be my life, and I was so excited about it. I was like, why not live like day to day and like week to week? And I generally wanted to do that for a really really long time, and I think I did for a bit. Like I just traveled. I was like, I'm gonna leave. Um, but yeah, like I feel like if that was the base, then like making money wasn't really in my mind like hard. And therefore like failure like was like, oh, if you like my mind like the worst thing that could happen was either you go to like prison or like you are homeless, or like you're on the streets, and like because of like a bunch of shit I did. And I don't think in like my mind those two were achievable with the things that I was doing.
Hmm.
So everything else was like, I like this is fun, and I'll just do what I like. I was so excited about like just making coffee. I like it was even did a barista course and everything.
That sounds fun though. At least you can make yourself a really good coffee every day now.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was so much fun. Why not? Right? Like I was really excited about that. So
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. I like the way you probably kind of think. And I mean, I don't know what kind of brings, how that kind of builds that for you. That, from what I understand, is that you do what you want to do and you really don't fear in any way. And I think your mind kind of goes on what if it works rather than versus what if it doesn't work out.
mm,
So which is a really a refreshing thought process as compared to what I have come across, or even in my own experiences as well, which is a great way to kind of lead life. So I just, from here, I wanted to kind of take our listeners through your journey of creating the spaces, where people can grow. So I would love to understand how this idea came about, and how did you kind of get into this profession altogether?
yeah, sure. So I was in VC for 7 years. So venture capital is pretty much like Shark Tank. Like you, it's like I was one of the sharks, but I wasn't really like as cool as a shark on Shark Tank. But you invest in people. And this whole thesis was like, hey, what happens when you bring people together? Like if you bring a bunch of like different types of people together into a room, they form companies, and then you invest in them. And for a large period, like for pretty much all my professional life or whatever you want to call it, like working life, I saw all these people like actualizing their dreams and like making a future happen that they believed in their head, right? And I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I did that in Australia for like 4 years, and like did that in like, so I did it in MENAP as well, so Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. So did that for a year as well. I lived in Saudi and Dubai as well, and that was really cool. And I think at that point I realized that like living overseas, realized that like talent is evenly distributed around the world. Like I think there's smart people everywhere in the world. You're not smarter in Australia or the US or London or Paris, whatever. And I think so. We came with this. Like I was like, oh, why don't we just create spaces where a bunch of people just came together? Because there's smart people around the world. Like why don't we just create spaces where a bunch of people came together and like started talking about like cool things or working on like really hard problems. like I was pretty like like at that point, like I quit Antler and in MENAP or Dubai, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just take some time and explore. And I traveled. Like I lived in London, I lived in Paris for a bit, and that's for a bit. So just traveled and yeah, like the talent was 80 million distributed is what I learned, and then sort of was like, why not create these spaces, right?
Hmm.
And and yeah, like I guess we started with like homes where a bunch of people lived together, created together, um, and yeah, there was some really incredible humans that came. I think there's a lot of people that were trying to break away from the cycle of like school, education, job, and then dying. Like I think that's a really like toxic cycle in my
Mm.
mind. Like I'm saying, it's not. It is for some people, but it's not for everybody. And
Yeah.
I think we're generally just forced into this cycle, and it's just a really sad one. So in my mind, it's like, okay, can you educate people on like how like that, hey, you can break out of this cycle. This is not just what all life is
Mm.
about. And then B, like what happens when you break out of this cycle? Like where do you go? Like what happens, right? Like you're like, oh, like now I've broken out of the cycle, like that's it. All right. All right. Like what do I do? So we were trying to be that place where if you do break out of the cycle or want to break
Yeah.
out of the cycle, you can come and then be, because I had, right? Like I didn't really, like education wasn't something that was important to me, um and like you could just do cool shit without having a degree. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? This is insane.
You
Um,
found your sweet spot.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, so we created those spaces, and we sort of did that in 7 cities around the world. So people lived together for a month, up to 6 months, and that was really cool. And then I came back to Australia at the start of this year,
Hmm.
and I was like, so I left Australia like 2, 3 years ago, and I was like, yeah, I was like, there's not like I was kind of bored of Australia. There was also like my people, like the people that were creating one in Australia, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave. And I came back and then I realized, wow, like Australia is actually really beautiful. Like the infrastructure is really nice. Like the people are really great. Like I think we're at this point in Australia where people are starting to realize that creating things is better than like sort of going through this cycle of like getting a job and maybe another job and
Absolutely. Yeah.
right another job. So yeah, just focused on Australia now and sort of creating these spaces in Australia. The goal is to create a city or a neighborhood, like a physical neighborhood where people, just like you move to a place for good education, you should be able to move to a place where people are creating things, music, art, startups, experimenting, things like that.
The kind of vision that you had back then in the university where you were like, why am I not able to, do what I want to learn? And why is there's so much restriction? And now you are in a position to, create that space where people can learn in the way that suits them the most and where they can retain the most. So it's really interesting to see that how things really work out when you really want something to happen. But I think that took you a journey to kind of reach over here. I'd like to kind of go a few steps back because I think I wanted to really understand that no one really thinks of being a VC, as a profession, or maybe not a lot of people. How did that come about, in your journey? Because early on, that's what you did. Like you became a VC, you were working with Antler. How did that happen for you?
I think it was very much like at university. I was trying to like create a bunch of like I saw a lot of really cool people around me were like creating things, and I wanted to like help them or support them in terms of like I was like, why isn't a bunch of like funding or people excited about like student entrepreneurship? And so we started a student fund or like tried to start a student fund called Textbook Ventures. And the idea was like, why don't we educate all students in New South Wales about entrepreneurship? And from there, we invited somebody called who's like sort of runs Antler in Australia and APAC, and he was like, "Oh, doing this thing in Australia. Do you want to help out?" And I was like, "Yep, sounds good." So it was very much like was not part of the journey. Like I was studying engineering, finance wasn't a place. I don't really know what venture was, and yeah, it just kind of like all worked out, I guess, retrospectively. But yeah, not really a deeper answer there.
Yeah, so back then, I would love to understand, because whenever we start something new, which we kind of have really thought of, but we do come across and it somewhere feels like good to us and we align with that and we just go on that. We face a lot of unseen challenges, because unheard, unseen, because we don't know that path. Did you face that at all, like any challenges while you were beginning your VC journey at that point in time?
Um, Not really. Like I don't know. Like things were hard, obviously. Like working, like figuring it out and stuff like that. Like was probably my first proper job. Um, like in terms of like professional stuff and like it's definitely challenging, but I don't know. Like it was okay. Like I think I'd been through enough like things to realize that it was okay. Like
I mean, first of all, thank you so much for kind of, taking us through your journey, I would say, your life story. And it was really interesting to understand that there definitely was some ups and downs in your life, but I can see that you always had that conviction in yourself. Probably that's something that's inbuilt. Sometimes we have to kind of work on it. So that's all good for our listeners who are right now here or watching us, that if you feel that's something that you're struggling with, it is completely fine. We can always work on that. And on that perspective, and on that note, I would love to understand, Akshat, in your entire journey so far, professionally or personally, were there any, let's say, the traits or anything, skills that you had to build that did not come naturally to you, which would support you professionally or personally? Like,
I think probably the biggest one is like nothing's that really deep. Like everything's kind of like pretty surface level. Like if you really think about it, like I don't know, like you could be like, wow, this is like the worst thing that could happen, and then you're like, oh, that's actually not that bad, and like just like going to the highs, and like I think like it's the same with highs. Like this could be the best thing ever, but it's also not that best because it could be like I don't know. So like just managing that has been pretty interesting. Like that's probably been the biggest one. I think like trying to learn how you manage like the
being neutral and balanced at the highs and the lows. I think, and that is probably the best kind of thought process one can keep to keep going on in life, because we definitely will be encountering some really good times and some extremely bad times in our life that we may not be even able to, at that point in time be able to understand that what's happening with us. But this is such a good mental tool to kind of build, to be not get faced with, what's happening, if it's too good and if it's too bad, because things keep changing in life. So I think that is a really good takeaway for me, especially today. Just understand, that how to keep yourself balanced, because balance is the key, I feel, for moving forward in life. On that note, I would love to kind of, before we wrap up and take your leave, and love to thank you for your time. What's kind of next for you? What are you thinking? What are you excited about?
yeah. I think sort of Araya, we're trying to create a space or a home for people who perhaps feel lost in life or are excited about like sort of figuring out the cycle or experimenting or creating in Australia. And it feels like Australia has been really kind to me over the last couple of months, and I feel like there's a lot of like people that are excited about Araya, and like we have a home in Australia, like in Drummoyne in Sydney, um, that a bunch of cool people are living in. So there's a lot of momentum around Araya, and I think like what's next is like perhaps keeping that. Like, how do you realize that momentum? Like, how do you like sort of? So we're gonna like start new houses. I think like this idea of like a city or a neighborhood is getting like super close. Like it's like I can see it. Like I think like perhaps like at the start of this year it was like, oh wow, that's a big goal. Like, oof. Um, but like it feels like it's coming together, and that's what I'm really
Love
excited about.
that. Given that what I've understood so far about you and what you really want to do, kind of the legacy that you want to leave, I'm so excited to hear that you are finally able to kind of, see through things and building something that can help you reach that goal, and you're on that journey. So many congratulations to you, and all the very best for your path of as you kind of embark on this one. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you one last question, and this is for everyone who's listening to us. Not everyone is able to, as I mentioned a while back, that have that inbuilt conviction about doing things that they want to. It could be for many reasons: the kind of environment that they're brought up, what they're made to believe about themselves, or the kind of experiences that they might have gone through that may have broken them in many ways. that how can one build conviction in their own journey in themselves and keep moving on in life?
Yeah, I would say like there's nothing in your brain that allows you not to do something. Like there is there's nothing ever that like is holding you back. Like you can do literally like if you want to build a rocket tomorrow, you can go on YouTube, like look at get a bunch of parts and build a rocket. Like there's literally no like chemical in your brain or like neuron in your brain that's going you can't do something. If you stick with that thought, it's kind of beautiful because you're like, wow, you can just do anything you want.
Yeah, I like that. It's the power of your thought. Like what you think, you can make that happen. And probably if you can think negative and believe in what your mind is saying, then probably you can think positive and also believe in what your mind is saying. So it's just about believing in the kind of the thought that one has. So yeah, thank you so much, Akshat, for being on my first step ever, for giving your time and taking us through your story and letting us deep into your mind and yeah, and your journey. It has been a fun chat. I hope it was fun for you as well, sharing your journey.
Awesome.
And I would leave the link below in the show notes for our listeners. I think a few people who probably love the idea of what you're doing may love to kind of, have a look about what is coming up and what are you building. That sounds really exciting. And to all my listeners, before we take their leave, I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying or a thought that they have really resonated with throughout their life, or maybe something recent that you are kind of believing in more.
Yeah, this is what Araya uses, and this is something that I resonate with. It's like you can just do things. Like that's what I would say. It's like you can just do things. Like there's nothing. Like I keep repeating it. Like if you sit down with this thought or this quote or whatever you want to call it, like it's pretty powerful. So you can just do things. Is what I would say.
Just take actions. Just do
Yeah.
things. Love that. Thank you so much, Akshat, for being on my first step ever. And to all my listeners out there, thank you so much for being with us so far. I know that you have definitely been interested with some of the thought process discussed over here, and that's why probably you're hanging out. So thank you for that. Do check out this. I will leave the link below if you want to kind of know more about Akshat and what he's been creating. And as I say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you next time. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.